Welcome back to the Caregivers Careport, the podcast dedicated to helping caregivers manage their emotions, mindset, and life changes so that they can save their own health during and after caregiving. Today, we're going to consider a topic that affects so many of us in the caregiving community. That is, the changes that occur in our thinking, our spirits, and our emotions as we persevere in our caregiving role. In the last few decades, there has been a growth of interest and research about the effects of stress and how it changes us physically and mentally and emotionally. There is a growing understanding of how it can change how we view our lives, our work, and our ability to draw close to others in our relationships. We'll talk about the symptoms of burnout and what is called compassion fatigue. We'll learn about how these show up in family caregivers, and if or when this may happen to you, you'll learn what to do about it. You've probably heard about burnout in workers, and in particular those who have worked in healthcare through the pandemic. And we explored burnout in a previous podcast episode, but I want to revisit it in more depth. Burnout is more than just feeling worn out. It's defined as feelings of hopelessness and difficulties in dealing with work or in carrying out one's job effectively. These negative feelings usually have a gradual onset, and they can stem from the feeling that one's efforts just make no difference, or they can be associated with a very high workload or a non-supportive work environment. Now, burnout has kind of three main components, and there are various symptoms within those components. The first component is overwhelming exhaustion. Imagine caring for your elderly mother who has Alzheimer's. You're on call 24/7, ensuring she's safe, fed, and comfortable. Over time, the constant vigilance and physical demands of lifting, moving, and assisting her can leave you physically exhausted. She asks you the same questions repeatedly, not remembering your answer each time. Nights are filled with interrupted sleep. She gets up and is unsteady on her feet and disoriented as to where she is. She calls out, so you get up to help her. When you've gotten her settled, it's hard for you to go back to sleep. Your mind is racing. Days pass, then weeks and months, maybe even years. Does it sound familiar? And the next kind of category in burnout is the development of cynicism and detachment. So consider Sarah, a mother of three and a caregiver for her father who suffered a stroke. She's juggling her kids' needs with her father's medical appointments and physical therapy, and it can be overwhelming at times. The constant pressure and lack of personal time make her more prone to snapping at her children or feeling unreasonably angry over small issues. She cries a lot. The accumulated stress manifests as irritability and frequent mood swings, and she feels overwhelmed as time passes, and she begins to care less. She's less invested in the care she gives her father and starts doing the minimum for him. She lets her involvement in her kids' activities and schooling slide. As she becomes more cynical about life, she finds it just easier to detach and not care than it would be to openly face her responsibilities and proactively set boundaries, clarify her priorities, and work out realistic and sustainable plans and goals, and get help when she needs it. She has quit doing the things she used to enjoy, and those activities that once provided relaxation now feel like burdens. And so instead, she just withdraws and becomes a blunted version of herself. Now, the third hallmark of burnout is a sense of ineffectiveness and lack of accomplishment. Alex had been caring for his mother with Parkinson's disease for years. He loved his mother and was committed to caring for her. But as much as he wanted to continue doing his best for her and encouraging her, he began to feel trapped in a never-ending routine of care tasks with little improvement in her condition. His thinking became very pessimistic, and he ruminated on the belief that he was a failure. He was not making things any better, and he felt guilty. The relentless demands and lack of progress had led to feelings of hopelessness and despair, making it hard for him to see any light at the end of the tunnel. Well, these stories highlight how the intense demands of caregiving, coupled with carrying those burdens over an extended period of time, can lead to burnout. It's crucial to acknowledge these signs and understand that experiencing them doesn't mean you're failing as a caregiver. It means the burden is great and you're human. Burnout is real. And although it has traditionally been described in people working in jobs, in their employment, in difficult and demanding work environments, it can happen to caregivers, even if they are caregiving at home or at a distance. But I want to go beyond burnout today. As important as understanding burnout is, there is another condition which may befall family caregivers, even though it is usually written about and researched in the context of medical clinicians or medical providers, and that is compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue describes the physical, emotional, and psychological impact of helping others, and it leads to a diminished ability to empathize or feel compassion for others. The Canadian Medical Association has described compassion fatigue as the cost of caring for others or for their emotional pain, and it resulting from the desire to help relieve the suffering of others. And while compassion fatigue is usually talked about in reference to medical providers, I've seen it in many caregivers. Compassion fatigue is not the same as burnout, although burnout can be a part of compassion fatigue. Burnout typically emerges as in response to a prolonged stress, whereas compassion fatigue has a more rapid and acute onset. Burnout can occur in any profession, but in contrast, compassion fatigue mainly affects healthcare professionals and, I think, family caregivers who provide direct patient care. And when they're providing this direct patient care, they begin to be kind of overcome by the intensity of that experience. And as a consequence, they kind of shut down their ability to feel empathy for others and to enter into the other person's experience. Burnout can be a part of compassion fatigue in that the symptoms of numbness, irritability, cynicism, the sense of helplessness and hopelessness, and lack of effectiveness can be present in both. But the important thing to understand about compassion fatigue is that it causes the loss of the ability to feel empathy for others, to truly accompany them on their journey, and to be present with them in their suffering. I remember Maria, who juggled caring for her aging parents, even though she was already caring for her husband, who was disabled from a construction accident. The constant demands wore her down. She began experiencing compassion fatigue marked by emotional exhaustion, irritability, and detachment. Simple tasks felt overwhelming and her patience waned, making her snappy with her parents and distant with her husband. She was no longer able to really listen to them and empathize with them. At the same time, she started to feel like she had to be a superhero to be really strong, tough, and independent. And she was unwilling, or maybe even unable, to express her own internal struggles for fear that she would look weak or incapable to others, or even weak to herself. She didn't want to be judged. She wanted to be hyper resilient and strong. One evening, after snapping at her mother, who had started crying because she couldn't unbutton her own blouse, Maria broke down. She realized she had changed. Her warmth and responsiveness were gone. She knew she was different and she didn't like what she was seeing in herself. She felt guilty and had thoughts that she was a failure. She really wanted her old, warm, and caring, loving self back. So, how can we caregivers help ourselves and heal from burnout and compassion fatigue? The remedies for both mostly overlap, although for burnout alone, sometimes a change of job, work schedule, or working environment can take care of it. But there are many additional ways we can help restore ourselves from burnout and compassion fatigue. And here is a sequence of steps that you can take to put yourself on the road to recovery or to help prevent them befalling you if you've not yet experienced them. First of all, be attentive to your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. This is called being mindful. Be in touch with yourself. If you recognize changes that point to burnout and or compassion fatigue, practice self-compassion. Be respectful and loving toward yourself. Reassure yourself that you're only human, you can't be in control of everything, and you're working within a situation which is stressful on many levels. You're bearing witness to another person's suffering and losses that, it just ignites things within ourselves. So don't judge yourself harshly. Bearing witness to those suffering experiences and weaknesses in others can remind us on some level that they are vulnerable, and we are also vulnerable to experiencing those types of things at some point in our lives. It can be very threatening, and we can have responses to those threats that we may not want or invite, but they happen. So don't judge yourself harshly. You are human. Then give yourself permission and encouragement to care for yourself. Healing requires intentional action and support. So prioritize your self-care. Self-care can take many forms. Take Marianne, who cares for her adult daughter who has developmental challenges. She found solace in a weekly Pilates class for seniors. Initially, she felt guilty taking the time for herself, but soon she realized that those sessions really recharged her. She enjoyed the company of others in the class, and her body felt more relaxed and stronger. This personal time away helped her return back home to caregiving with renewed energy and patience and joy. She was less stressed emotionally and physically, and she was renewed by the social time. So getting moving, staying active, eating well, staying hydrated, getting a sufficient amount of sleep, utilizing meditation, and even getting a massage can all be impactful home remedies. And I would add, when you are taking part in non-caregiving activities for your own recreation and restoration, unplug from the caregiving related thoughts and activities so you can truly have some time away and make it more restorative. If you're feeling really overwhelmed by your work as a caregiver, it's important to reach out for professional help. You may be able to ease your feeling of stress, anxiety, and exhaustion by talking with a therapist, psychiatrist, or working with a health coach. Sometimes, it's hard to have the same kinds of conversations that you can have with a professional who is not in non-judgmental and not right in the middle of the situation, but can listen to what you're struggling with and really give you some professional help in a private setting. Also, it is important to reach out to friends and family and to get support. We humans are built for community, whether it's in families, groups of friends, coworkers, in groups of people who are like-minded. It may not sound fancy or sophisticated, but building community is the most powerful thing you can do. Make regular plans to get together, to visit, and to reconnect with each other. Check in with each other and address signs of difficulty you may be having. Share with each other. You could also volunteer somewhere which is unrelated to your caregiving work so that you can get out of your own head and more distant from your own worries for a time. It's also very helpful to participate in giving activities kind of in a different venue and maybe in a different group or association. You can join local or online support groups. In the United States, we often have a very mind your own business culture. We prize independence and self-reliance over community much of the time. But anything that takes away from our isolation will help us. So remember, you don't have to be alone, and being in communities can be very supportive. If you've been too busy for church, take time to reconnect with your faith family. If you don't attend church but are faithful, consider a daily prayer practice or devotional meditations. Perhaps you define spirituality in a different way. So make space for that in your life. Get back to nature and recognize things greater than yourself. Also, a daily mindfulness and relaxation practice can help you create a sense of calm and composure. It won't remove your stressors, but it can help you handle them better. And that in turn will give you more confidence and give you more of a sense of being in some control of your situations, even though we know we can't control everything about it. There are many online resources and apps that have guided meditations and instruction for guided relaxation that can help you be aware of just what is going on with yourself and help you calm and relax yourself. And finally, focus on compassion satisfaction. I love that term, compassion satisfaction. Focus on the positives of helping others. There may be terrible things going on, but focus on the wins and focus on how you are living out your personal values as a caregiver. Have gratitude often throughout the day. Focusing on gratitude directly resets whatever cynicism, negativity, or numbness you may be experiencing. It ignites joy. Remember, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's essential for being the best caregiver you can be. By prioritizing your self-care and asking for help, having social times, practicing mindfulness, taking breaks, focusing on gratitude, and being compassionate towards yourself, you can prevent or heal from burnout and compassion fatigue. You will feel better, and you'll be better able to continue providing the care your loved one needs and the care that in your dreams you want to provide. In our next episode, we'll delve into other factors which often go along with caregiving and can jeopardize your well-being. I'll share my developing ideas about how burnout and compassion fatigue, though really important in their own right and being very significant, they may be only part of the story in more fully understanding the complexity of caregiver stressors. So next episode, we'll stand at the intersection where practical, mental, and emotional demands of caregiving become intertwined with the heart-wrenching personal experiences of grief and loss, life changes, family dynamics, and economics that caregivers experience as they take that caregiving journey. We owe it to ourselves to name and deal with our challenges and love ourselves on our journeys as we take on the momentous, challenging, and life-changing role of caregiver. Remember, you are beautiful, you are generous, you're human, and you are worthy of compassion and care. I respect you, and I will continue to do what I can to support you. If you would like to talk with me personally to explore ways I might more fully support you, and just send me an email at cba.scissortailhealthcoaching.com or sign up for a complimentary one-on-one session at scissortailhealthcoaching.com. So that's all for this episode of the Caregivers Careport. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with other caregivers who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, I'm Dr. Corabelle Arps, and this is the Caregivers Careport. Keep caring, keep comforting, and so importantly, keep taking care of yourself.